Welcome to the Twilight Zone. This is a case about Planet Methadone, and it's a very interesting case study with many different issues going on. So let's get started. The setting is a methadone maintenance program and clinic called Transitions. The purpose of the program was to help patients reduce or cease the abuse of other drugs related to the lifestyle of opiate dependency, such as cocaine, amphetamines, methamphetamines, alcohol, and benzodiazepines. Some patients entered the group to detox from opiates, while others were required to be on methadone for the rest of their lives. Time in treatment was highly individual due to each patient's need. The program has only been open for a few months. Let's introduce the characters. Dr. Gwyneth Arthur, owner of Transitions and trained addiction specialist, new at the administrative aspects of managing an entire program. She followed the wrong set of rules that were more lenient for the first 2 months of the program's opening. She's not a big fan of the stricter rules that are in place now, including the dress code. She's often seen in jeans, flannel shirts, hiking boots, heavy gray braids, and no jewelry or makeup. A bit rough around the edges. Personal commitment to the clients is high, and she is most adored by everybody. Bill Preston, new program director and an RN. He made sense of all the new regulations. He is invaluable to Dr. Arthur, although he does lack people skills and would irritate and even offend staff and clients. The break room was a common place for complaint sessions targeting Bill. He commonly wears jeans, tees, and is a devout family man. Ella Markham, clinical director at Transitions. She's 6 feet tall, wears peasant garb with very long, straight jet black hair. She has worked with some very tough caseloads and has had a lot of clinical experience. And Kerry Carson, our leading role in this story. He used to be an independent graphic artist for major national publications. Although he is new in the field at age 45, he's had incredible life experiences and did excellent in his practicum placements. He's ready to get to work and pay off student loans. All right, let's jump into the story and start with Carrie's strange beginnings at Transitions. Carrie's job interview at Transitions had reflected the unsettled, still evolving environment and staff relationships in the new program. He had withdrawn his application the following day, but Ella had been persistent, saying she wanted another MSW there. She pushed him to get hired and took him under her wing during his first couple of months there. Carrie found it difficult to figure Ella out. Her office, with pillows on the floor, incense burning, playing music softly, and lamps draped with scarves, it was cozy, yet he saw all-out fights in staff meetings with her. She complained about other staff and was openly hostile towards Bill. She also asked for a mental health referral for her alcoholic boyfriend, with the condition that wherever he went, she wanted Carrie to sign a release to allow her to be involved in his treatment, stating that he's an alcoholic and very depressed, so he's not a reliable reporter of his own condition. She rambled long about their relationship, peppered with frequent hints at abuse and rape in her past, which made Carrie uncomfortable with so much disclosure. Wondering if it was a good idea to take the position, he also struggled with the population in the Addictions Treatment Center. Carrie felt more like a cop than a counselor, uncomfortable with the level of confrontation needed to work with these clients. New clients on Friday. On Friday, Carrie inherited some clients from another therapist who only lasted a few months. The first client was Greg Ross. He had 3 years of narcotic abuse, originally used OxyContin from a back injury, and became dependent. He claimed a need to control his pain and showed the prescription, yet was hesitant to allow them to contact his orthopedic doctor. He is suspected of selling OxyContin. He lives on disability payments while driving an expensive SUV. Julia Ruiz, never been in methadone treatment before, and came in voluntarily to get help for her addiction to heroin and cocaine. She has a job at a restaurant and a Mexican boyfriend with no documentation. He is dependent on her for housing, food, and translation. He had been arrested several times for domestic violence, but Julia always dropped the charges when he called begging for another chance. Julie was also overwhelmed with the loss of her adoptive mother, who had died suddenly only 6 weeks before. She had grown up in the system until she was adopted. In foster care, she experienced physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. After the first session, Carrie noticed that she was really struggling from the drug withdrawal but couldn't see any reason to forcibly hospitalize her. He hoped that she would just come back for help. Test results came back as positive for heroin, cocaine, hepatitis C, and she was pregnant. On Monday, Julia came in for her appointment. She was covered in bruises and one side of her face was swollen. Her boyfriend had thrown her through the front door. Carrie convinced her to think about pressing charges this time and again hoped that she would come back. When Greg came in for his appointment, his screening came back positive for cocaine and benzodiazepines. But Greg insisted that he was taking only the drugs that were ordered for him from the orthopedic doctor. Carrie confronted Greg, and Greg argued back, saying, "Your lab is wrong, and I can prove it because that's not been my urine for the past 3 weeks. I got my 4-year-old nephew to peen a cup for me, and you've been testing his urine and not even knowing it. I know my nephew is not using cocaine and benzos, so your lab is incompetent." This admittance could get Greg administratively discharged from the lab. Not sure what to do, Carrie tells Greg to come on Wednesday to talk with the doctor to discuss the testing with her. On Tuesday, Carrie met with Ella for supervision and started to tell her about Julia. Immediately, Ella told him to report Julia for child abuse because she's pregnant and using. Feeling hesitant, Carrie explained that he didn't think drug use during pregnancy had to be reported yet, and Julia seemed so skittish about being there, and if he violated her confidentiality now, she may not come back. Ella still tells him if he doesn't report it, he could lose his license. Next, Carrie tells Ella about Greg, and once again her response is to report it as child abuse. He didn't argue this time, he just finished the meeting. On his way back to his office, though, he stopped to talk to Dr. Arthur about the situation and how Ella wanted him to report the 2 clients for child abuse. Dr. Arthur tells him not to do anything with Julia yet. And regarding Greg, she's concerned that they would get sued and directs him to do an observed collection of his urine specimen and have Greg do the test strip in front of him. Carrie felt relieved until he saw Ella that mid-afternoon, demanding to know if he had made the reports yet. Carrie informed her that Dr. Arthur said that they should wait. Ella was furious, wanting to know why he disobeyed a direct order to report the cases. Carrie said that he felt they needed to talk about it, and Dr. Arthur agreed. Ella snapped back. "Fine, I'll take this up with Dr. Arthur," and she left. On Wednesday, to his relief, Carrie didn't hear anything more until mid-afternoon. He found an email from Ella directing him to transfer Julia to her caseload, moments before Julia was scheduled for a session. As he was reading the message, Julia knocked on the door. She looked even worse than the day before, and she said she was ready for further help and to be transferred to safe homes. He told her to go over to the pharmacy to get her dose. As Julia was walking down the hall, Ella came out of her office, walked up to Julia, took her by the arm, telling Julia that she needed to come with her. Julia shot Carrie a look of confusion and pleading. Carrie tells Ella that Julia was going over to get her dose and then would come back so he could finish up. Ella still takes Julia by the arm and pulls her into the office and turns to Carrie and says, "You can come in or out, I don't care which." As she was starting to shut the door, Carrie pushed back the door and began explaining the situation to Julia while interrupting the train of questions Ella was already shooting at her like, "Tell me about the abuse you said you've experienced, and why are you risking your baby's health with all these drugs you're doing? Don't you know we'll have to report you?" Julia began to cry. Carrie stood up and told Ella that he really needed to finish his session with Julia. Once back in his office, Carrie apologized to Julia and hoped that she would come back. She said she would. He rode home on his bike with lingering questions of possibly being fired. Should he have listened to Dr. Arthur or Ella? And he's rethinking his position at the Transitions Treatment Center.